Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is August 5th, 2020. We're going to be talking about muscle today, the entire show. We're going to have Dr. Hypertrophy on the show with us, none other than Brad Schoenfeld. And did I say something? What did I just say? Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. I was thinking of my dentist. And then later in the show, we're going to talk about a study that was just published out of McMaster's University that looks at 141 genes that may be responsible for muscle wasting, especially as we age. Before we get started, of course, I have to thank our title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods. You can go to eatlegendary.com and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off all of their amazing products. If you are a low-carb guy like me or you're keto, you'll find everything you want at Legendary Foods. Eatlegendary.com, SHR10, save 10% off. I have to dedicate today's show to a listener in South Africa. His name is Andre Kleinhans. Excuse me. He lives in Pretoria, South Africa. He's turning 55 tomorrow on August 6th. He's legally blind, and because of that, he wasn't expected to achieve much in life, but having access to information and having a will of steel has allowed him to prove the naysayers wrong. He is a registered physical therapist. He holds a master's degree in information technology. On the sports front, he has represented his country of South Africa in powerlifting. He managed to win a world championship in Colorado Springs in 1995. He recently competed in the INBA Natural Bodybuilding World Championship in San Diego in 2014, where he placed sixth, in the Masters division. His keen interest in nutrition and supplementation has led him to become a certified ISA nutritional specialist. And during 2019, he wishes to further his studies in this field. Happy birthday, Andre. Thank you for being a fan of the show. Thank you for being a true superhuman. So there you go. And now, without further delay, the reason we're here today is Dr. Brad Schoenfeld. How you doing, man? Long time.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's amazing because I feel this real strong sense of fondness for you. And we don't do a lot of shows, but it's been going on for 14 years now. And it's amazing to me how many professional athletes pay attention to what you do now. I mean, serious physique and strength athletes who pay attention to what you do, because you are really the only person out there that is working hard on discovering the most efficient way to build muscle. And let's face it, none of us want to spend any more time in the gym than we have to. And it just fascinates me because you've risen, to the top very, very quickly because of all of your work. And I commend you for that. It's fantastic.
Well, I thank you, Carl. I want to defer, though, and say there's a lot of very good researchers out there. But I do think that my background, as you know, but many who don't, I was a personal trainer for many years before I became a researcher educator. And that really has driven my research focus. And I would certainly attribute my what I do to what the curiosities that I got and the insights that I got from being a practitioner.
Right. So you had published a book. This is the second edition of your book. It's called The Science and Development of Muscle Hypertrophy. Mm-hmm. It's available at Amazon to those who want to go get it. You really put a much finer point on the process of building muscle, and you include a lot of things in this book that I wasn't prepared for you to include. But obviously, in order to stay current, you can't ignore some of these things. We're going to talk more about them, but modulating mTOR and AMPK with lots of drugs nowadays. You do hit myostatin again in this discussion. By the way, I eat myostatin null beef from Piedmontese.com. They're a sponsor of the show. But you really kind of dive deep into a lot of stuff that I think a lot of people ignore when they talk about building muscle, but you can't ignore it because you can't build muscle in the current environment without taking into account some of these actors, so to speak, that people are using. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to start off by saying this is a textbook. It is not. So this is not like your light bathroom reading material, your muscle rags. So this really delves into the science, as the name implies, science and development. And I get really deep into the molecular mechanisms, so at the intracellular level, like you're talking about with enzymes such as mTOR and AMPK, myokines such as myostatin, your interleukins, etc. And also it gets into a lot of practical stuff as well. So it builds from basically the idea of the book, or the concept of the book is to build from the smallest molecular level all the way up to the practical implications of the resistance training variables that we know. But yeah, if you having an understanding, at least a good general understanding of the mechanisms, really has it can drive your programming focus. It allows you to understand what really makes muscles grow, and thus can enhance your ability to properly carry out programming.
So before we talk about what makes muscle grow, how do you assess whether or not muscle is growing or not? I mean, is it enough just to look in the mirror? Because don't we have a post-training edema effect that may lie to us, and we go, wow, I'm getting so big. But a couple of days later, if you don't keep training, you're not that big after all.
Yeah, well, you certainly shouldn't be looking in the mirror you can look in the mirror, but not to measure your muscle building progress over time. You'd want to, as you said, you're going to have generally a pump. So the pump effect is due to edema in muscle. So hydration, water within muscle. And if you want to ultimately see what your muscle building results are chronically over time, you'd want to wait a couple of days. Usually 48 hours would be a good general, even 24. It depends upon what you're doing, but certainly possible 48 hours would be a good yardstick there. And that would give you a better gauge. Now, looking in the mirror, most people are not going to be able to effectively gauge their own growth because you see yourself every day. So if you're looking at yourself every day, seeing the changes that happen, you're not remembering what you looked like 2 months ago or 3 months ago. So you want to get more objective measures. Actually, in the book, I discuss all the objective measures. The problem is that most of them are beyond the scope of what most people can do. I mean, a DEXA would be a very nice way. Let's say monthly DEXA tests would be a very nice way to, over time, see your progress. But first of all, you have to get to the DEXA place, and it's not exorbitantly expensive, but you're talking anywhere between $50 to $75 to $100, depending upon where you're located and the specific lab that you're going to go to. So there's costs. I mean, you can get skin folds, which would be kind of the most efficient. Skin folds and circumference would be kind of the budget way to go about it. The problem with that would be you're not going to do that to yourself. It's going to be very hard to skin fold yourself in the proper places. It would be hard.
Yeah, someone has to do that for you. Somebody has to do
and the problem is that proficiency really matters in a test like that. So I mean, I've seen like gyms. You go to a gym and they'll take your body fat, and I mean, I'll look at a person and say, you know what, you're 25%. They're getting skin folded at 8% body fat, and I'm looking at it and it's like, you're over 20% body fat.
Why bother, right?
Yeah, you can eyeball it better. So so there are limitations to that, but objective measures, if you really want to get a good gauge as to how you're progressing, you want to have good objective measures.
One of the things that I was reminded about by looking through your book in preparation for the show, because I was looking for what had been added since last time. And what I was reminded about were the actual variables that we have at our disposal to effectively maintain muscle growth. You know, we hear about people hitting plateaus, and we know from an evolutionary perspective, the body is adaptive. It's supposed to get used to things because it's trying to remain. It's trying to just simply remain. Growing muscle is something from an evolutionary perspective that isn't really of great value to us because it's metabolically expensive tissue. Now we have to go find more food. And so there's always this down pressure, and myostatin is an example. But we hear about people hitting plateaus. And then when I look at the variables, volume, frequency, load, exercise selection, muscle type, rest intervals, rep duration, exercise order, range of motion, intensity of effort, two things came to mind. The first one was this is an amazing palette that we have available to us when we recognize that these are all the colors in the palette. The other one was, most of us do these things by accident, not on purpose. We get tired, we shorten up our rep range. We don't realize that that's an effective thing. We want to damn ourselves, but maybe it's not such a bad thing.
Well, I think having a degree of intuition in your training is a very important aspect. There's, I think, some decent science behind using it's called autoregulation. So autoregulatory concepts to help drive your programming. And I think if you're discounting, first of all, you have to be, if you're a beginner, you're not going to have good intuition in that regard. So you need a more formal structure. But once you have gotten to a certain level of training, you need to get in tune with your body, and you need to listen to your body. You can follow a structured program, but if you're not willing and able, willing is part of it, because some people just are so focused on pushing through no matter what, it blinds them. But also, if you're not able to understand how your body's responding and make adjustments along those lines, you're going to be shortchanging yourself. So one of the things, and I think this is a really important concept that is just so overlooked. Research is never going to tell you what to do. Research provides you with general guidelines for training. Training is highly individualized. When I do a study, there's a spectrum of inter-individual differences that people are going to experience. It's never clustered in a small, everyone's right around that mean. You're going to see some people are getting no results and some people are getting 20% growth in a given muscle. And it can vary between muscles and individuals. So you need to figure out what works best for you. That is an intuitive process over time. And it's intuitive in a certain aspect, but also you need to use logical reasoning to accomplish that. But again, no one is going to be able to tell you how you feel in a certain day. Only you can assess that. And if you're feeling run down, you should be taking time off. You don't necessarily have, if you're scheduling a 4-day-a-week training routine and on that 4th day you're trashed, it doesn't mean because you have that schedule you should be training in that context. You need to listen to your body and take time off.
Well, you know what frustrates me too? The idea that everything has to be done in 7 days. I made some of my greatest strength gains ignoring the weekly pattern and just doing 1 day on, 2 days off. And so maybe 1 week I trained a particular, body part once. Maybe I trained it. The point was, these are constructs that really have no place. We say, oh no, you've got to do 3 sets of everything. Oh no, you got to train, do everything you need to hit every body part in 1 week. That's not true, is it?
No, a week is an arbitrary unit. So ultimately, progress happens over time, whether that's a week, a month, 9 days, 10. There's no there's no prescribed formula that you would use for what your arbitrary unit will be. And ultimately, like I said, you need to pick whatever it is. A week is fine. It's not there's anything wrong with it, but it doesn't have to. You can do it over, like you said, a 3-day, ongoing 3-day periods, 10-day periods. But within that structure, even if you're doing 1 day on, 2 days off, and on that 4th day you're coming back and you're still trashed, go to a 5th day. Again, nothing says you must come in. There is no cookie cutter formula that should be dictating your training.
Early on, when you came on the show, you espoused an approach to training that really was very logical to me, and maybe that's why it resonated with me. But you train with all the heavy weight, low reps up front, and then as you become less energetic from the workout, you start to shift to lighter weights and doing higher reps. So you're actually doing everything in that whole continuum. That people argue 5 times 5 is the way to go. No, 8 reps is the way to go. And the way you espouse was, no, you do it all. You just that you do it the same way you would drive a car. You're not going to start off in 5th gear. You're going to start off in 1st, and as the car gradually increases inertia, you shift to 2nd and 3rd and 4th. And so do you still feel that's an appropriate way to train? Get all the heavy, low rep stuff out of the way up front, and then as your central nervous system and peripheral nervous system becomes taxed, start moving to lighter weights, higher reps, so that you have the entire continuum of training.
I think that is one way. I mean, I think there's multiple ways to accomplish it. I do think that if your goal is hypertrophy, there is benefits to training across a spectrum of repetition ranges. How that ultimately is put into practice, my favorite phrase is "it depends" on any applied topic, because we understand the concepts. People can make gains on many different levels and many different ways in terms of the structure of it. And ultimately, it depends upon individual factors, preferences. But I mean, I can give you a multiple. I can say that doing compound heavy work with your, let's say, free weight X. So you might do 5 reps with your squats. Let's say you're doing a leg workout. Do 5 reps, 5 RM or 5 reps for squats, 10 reps for your leg press, and then 15 reps for your leg extension, so that you're covering that within the same session. You could do a daily undulating periodization where you have a heavy day, moderate day, light day. You can have blocks of training. I wrote a book on this concept. I've written books on using several different concepts, but one of them was called the Max Muscle Plan, where it had a strength block and then a metabolic type block, and then a hypertrophy type block, where basically that's a bodybuilding style program that I've used for competitive bodybuilders, which looks to peak an athlete, bodybuilding athlete, at a given point. So again, it really will depend. I think there's a lot of viable options, but certainly that is one of them.
Are you a believer that age plays a role in how you should train? You know, I'm 62 now. I've suffered a lot of injuries. I've had my share of surgeries. I've pushed my body. I don't really have a lot to prove anymore, but I still want to be able to train as heavy as I can. Am I wise, or should I be going, okay, leave that for the young guys. I need to back off now?
So I would never give a one-size-fits-all prescription for that. I can give you general, again, research provides general guidelines, and that's all you could do. So when you're asking a question about age, you have to look at chronological age versus biological age. So chronologically, you might be 62, but biologically, you're probably 20 years younger. Now, maybe some of your joints are biologically 70 or something, but
right.
You've been training for a long time. That generally has built up a lot of credibility, if you will. So you're going to be able to do things that other people that are 62 would be trashed by. But as a general rule, as you get older, there's going to be you're going to have osteoarthritic issues. So there's going to be hyaline cartilage breakdown that's going to happen, which generally speaking, I tell people to back off somewhat. Now, heavy is a relative term, so you might not be doing probably not even, some people might still want to, but generally I'd say back away from your 1 RMs, 2 RMs, maybe even 3 RMs, but doing 4 and 5s, which is still a pretty heavy, low rep mode, I think could be viable. But if you have severe arthritis or osteoarthritis, or even moderate, which is bothering you, that's where you have to kind of be in tune with your body and say, you know what, that doesn't work. And is it going to make huge differences in your physique? No, not really. Could it benefit you? Yeah, but if you're not bodybuilding, or if you're not being a super competitive athlete, it's probably not going to be meaningful even. And then there's other factors too. So recovery ability tends to go down with age. Now, this, of course, is going to be individual as well, but there's just certain things that happen to the body that regardless, you're not going to perform the way you did at 60 as you did when you were 25 for the most part.
Unless you're hormonally optimized, right? I've been on testosterone since 2007. I use peptides. For a long time, I used growth hormone. I've moved to secretagogue type peptides, which we're going to talk about MGF a little bit later. So I think that maybe gives me a little bit of an edge for recovery.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it'll give you an edge, but if you're saying, now, will that make, so this is stuff that has never been studied. So is a guy that's on gear at 60 years old going to be as good as a 25-year-old that's natty? I can't answer that. But will it give you an edge? Yes. I would still think that there would be recovery-related issues that probably you can curtail some of those, but I'm not sure you can fully do away with them. But again, that's where again these general guidelines come in. So generally, I'd say you're going to need more recovery time. Generally, you're not going to be able to handle as much volume as you go on, and part of that has to do with joints as well. But those are all things that you need to be in tune with your body and we can give guidelines, and then you have to take that, and anyone who's in your situation would have to take that and see how you respond.
So how about advanced techniques, negatives and drop sets and all that, and even BFR, which I would consider an advanced technique nowadays, because you're taking some sort of apparatus and you're actually increasing the stress on the muscle from a typically lighter weight. Should these be used sparingly? Is there some evidence now that, we don't have to be so afraid of heavy negatives? They're not really doing that much damage. I did a show recently about negatives with elderly people and how by doing negatives, they actually were less at risk of injury, and muscle growth was faster. And they kind of looked at the muscle, they biopsied, and they said, there's not the damage we think is happening in muscle from negatives. Do you think that we have to be sparing with advanced techniques?
So it depends how you integrate them into a session. One thing the body does, so if you're going to do, let's say, negatives in one session, you're going to tend to get a lot of muscle damage. But there's something called a repeated bout effect that if you keep doing them over and over repeatedly, that dissipates substantially. If the negatives are for higher repetition, so if the weight is heavier, the negatives are going to tend to be more damaging. At least that's what the majority of the research shows, as opposed to doing lighter load negatives where there's not as much force on in the lengthening action. I do tend to think that, especially if you're using the supra negatives, the super maximal negatives, that they tend to be taxing neurally even to the system, and generally require or benefit from more
time off.
More time efficiency. More right. They're not using them as much. Things like drop sets, probably to a lesser extent, that's an issue. So it would depend upon what you're looking to do. I'm a proponent, and it's not well researched at this point, but including long length holds. So basically, it's like a loaded stretch.
Yeah.
In training, and again, not really a lot of research, but the potential for damage there also is.
So you're talking about a static hold, right? You get the muscle into a fully contracted position, and you have a heavy weight there, and the weight wants to pull the muscle and stretch it, and you're resisting that.
Well, but you're not in a fully contracted. You're in a stretch position. So let's say you're doing a dumbbell fly. Let's say you're doing a dumbbell fly. Yes. You would be in the start position of a dumbbell
at the
fly,
bottom,
not the finish. Exactly.
And I used to do those. I used to do those back in the day as a finishing movement. I read a study once that showed that it increases androgen receptor biogenesis in muscle tissue. Is there any truth to that? The loaded stretch increasing AR?
I have not seen that, or maybe I haven't. I just don't remember. But there is some evidence that there's some actually quite compelling evidence that the long length position is the most effective position for hypertrophy, at least in certain exercise. It depends on the exercise, but that in various exercises, depending on the movement, that the long length position is going to actually have greater increases in growth compared to the contracted position.
So what about aerobics, cardio, right? There's been lots of arguments that cardio burns muscle, but can cardiovascular training actually enhance the hypertrophic effect of exercise, of resistance training? Yep,
and that's, again, where the answer would be, and it depends. So can it interfere? There is something called the chronic interference hypothesis, where if you're doing cardio in combination with resistance training, it has the potential to interfere with your gains. But that's going to be a function of multiple factors. Number one, your training experience, the volume and duration and frequency of both the cardio and the resistance training routines, genetic factors that are going to enter in. But cardio certainly has a place in a resistance training session if you manage it properly. At the very least, it helps with recovery. So it helps with nutrient flow, with dissipating soreness if there is any, which will help you get back quicker. It enhances your mitochondrial biogenesis, which is the creation of mitochondria, and mitochondria actually have been shown to be involved in the hypertrophic response. It helps with capillary density, so increasing capillaries.
Yeah.
Again, that has recovery factors, nutrient exchange. So increasing or adding a cardio component to a resistance training routine, provided it is properly managed, becomes or can enhance your results, but it becomes a challenging proposition, especially as you get more experienced as a lifter, because there is actually good evidence that the more experience you get, the greater the potential for interference. And by the way, I was going to say, in the early stages of training, you can actually get increased hypertrophy just from doing cardio, because you're creating more volume and you're sedentary. It's actually just more stressors on the body that you can adhere to. So.
The book is called The Science and Development of Muscle Hypertrophy. It's the second edition. You get it at Amazon.com. You can also go to Dr. Schoenfeld's website, lookgreatnaked.com, to learn more about him. He's got some great articles there and great information. Other books that he has published, over 500,000 copies in circulation today. He's the guy to go to if you want to feel like you're not spending more time in the gym and wasting time, and you're making better gains. There's nobody that's done the research that he has done, and it started a long time ago for him. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I have lots more questions. Please post your questions as well, and we'll try to work them into the show as we go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid. You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks. Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it. Unlock your potential with the best cognitive enhancement and anti-aging supplements on the market. PureNootropics.net goes the extra mile for the highest quality ingredients, third-party tested to make sure you only receive the best your money can buy. There's no better choice with their money-back guarantee and free shipping. Try their best-selling DHM. Dihydromyricetin prevents hangovers and helps deliver detox after a night of drinking. Get your DHM and other nootropics and longevity supplements from PureNootropics.net, the purest supplements around.
Are you still on the fence about Body Protection Complex BPC Oral from drseeds.com? Listen to Maggie Kuhn, one of the owners of the C-Bus Lifting Company gym in Columbus, Ohio.
I had been having some nagging tendon issues that weren't injuries, just things that were annoying. You know, I'm 58 years old, so just older tendon kind of issues. For us powerlifters, you know, we really don't stop training when we have just nagging issues. We just kind of keep pushing through. And I started the BPC. What I noticed was I was doing some heavy tricep stuff that would have killed me before when I had an elbow problem, and I was able to do this with literally no pain at all.
Go to drseeds.com, drseeds.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your bottle of BPC Body Protection Complex today. Select Savory Snacks Original Biltong is the healthier alternative to sugar-laden beef jerky. Their sugar-free biltong is seasoned and then air-dried for up to 2 weeks, providing you with one of the most tender and flavorful meat snacks that you've ever had. They also use a fattier cut of beef, which adds to the tenderness and gives their biltong even better flavor. Select Savory Snacks Original Biltong is the perfect snack or travel companion for your busy life. Get a free bottle of Ranch-tastic seasoning with every order. Free shipping on orders of $99 or more. Get yours today at selectsavory.com/SHR.
Quest Nutrition makes bars, cookies, chips, and pizzas out of complete dairy-based proteins. Our products minimize net carbs and sugar without sacrificing taste. Each delicious chocolate-flavored chip, cookie chunk, and crunchy crumble is custom-made to maintain Quest macros. It's time to enjoy foods that work for you, not against you. It's time to enjoy your Quest.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
Welcome back. talking to Dr. Brad Schoenfeld about building muscle, something that he's passionate about. Thank God he's passionate about it, because he saves a lot of us the trouble of having to educate ourselves on these topics that we would never be able to do. So nutrition plays a very, very large role in your response to training. Do you think that most hard gainers just don't eat enough, and definitely don't eat enough protein?
I think that's the case in a lot of, when you say most, not sure most, but there's certainly a lot, whether it comes down to a majority or not. But yeah, I mean, protein, I think just calories per se, especially hard gainers. I think sometimes people say, well, I'm not getting, or hard gainer might say, I need to get my protein in, but then they, as we know, especially higher protein tends to blunt appetite, and they might not be supporting their growth with enough calories. If you want to maximize muscle, particularly for a hard gainer, it becomes more and more important to eat in a surplus.
Let's talk a little about some hot topics that are coming up now, and that is things that modulate mTOR and AMPK. They're becoming very, very popular. Things like metformin, things like rapamycin. These drugs are considered senolytics quite often, so they have an anti-aging benefit, but we also see that they interfere with mTOR to some degree. Lots of bodybuilders are using metformin today because they say it increases their gains by managing blood sugar and increasing insulin sensitivity. What does the research show? What does the science show? Should we be afraid of these things?
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's not an area that I get into a lot, Carl. The medication aspect. I think that the unfortunate thing with bodybuilders is basically their own experiments. So there's not a lot. The types of research that I'm aware of on these types of these types of drugs are not really looking at that as a primary outcome. Those are generally secondary outcomes, is what happens to muscle when they're doing certain things, and usually they're doing them in super physiological dosages. So to me, that's I wouldn't even venture a guess. I've seen some of the research on it, and some of it I think is equivocal. But to hearken a guess as to how it might actually cause a response, I think would be irresponsible for it.
So Dr. Mikhail Blagasclony, he's the guy who started all the rapamycin research. He was a cancer doctor, oncologist, and he started to notice things about people that were taking rapamycin for cancer, and that led him to publish several papers about its effects as a senolytic and reducing senescent cell load in tissue. And so one day we were texting, and I said to him, have you looked at, so rapamycin reduces mTOR for 3 days, and dramatically, 6 milligrams will reduce mTOR for 3 days. I said, have you looked at rapamycin in the face of high protein intake, high leucine, mTOR stimulating? And he said, no one's ever done that. I said, could it be that I could take 6 milligrams of rapamycin on Wednesday, and I could eat 400 grams of high quality protein that day, and mTOR doesn't shut down? And he sent me back a big question mark, and he said, you may be onto something. He said, maybe when people take rapamycin for anti-aging, they should also curtail their protein intake. So it's hard. I find it hard to believe that rapamycin will blunt mTOR when you're eating a high protein diet. And that might be why these senolytic drugs that are making their way into bodybuilding, no one's looking at a guy who's eating 350 grams of protein a day and taking 1,000 milligrams of metformin. They're only looking at sick people who take metformin and go, oh, wow, it really shuts mTOR down. But they're not looking at people like us who are consuming what would be considered by most people ridiculous amounts of protein. I kind of feel like there's a net effect where if the stimulation of mTOR is all the way up here and the reduction of mTOR is down here, you're going to end up not shutting off mTOR. What do you think?
Highly speculative, but first of all, I'm not clear that 350 grams of protein would, I assume you're kind of being somewhat facetious, but that's going to have any additional benefit above, 2 grams per kilogram or so. So when you're getting into really high protein intakes, generally it's going to become superfluous because your body just can't utilize that for tissue building purposes. But, and it'll be the amino acids would be oxidized. But if you're asking me to speculate, I would probably speculate that protein intake would be a mediator, that it would, whether it would obliterate the results of rapamycin, I don't know. I wouldn't think so, because it's the rapamycin is a powerful blunter of mTOR. You're right. To the best of my knowledge, that's never been looked at in vivo in the human body.
So let's do a little stream of consciousness on some of these things. Maybe you can kind of give me some bullets where you fall and how you feel. Myostatin.
Yeah, so myostatins are really interesting. So myostatin would be considered what's called a myokine. It's released within the muscle cell. Its primary role is to reduce hypertrophy. Basically, it's to put a ceiling, and conceivably, it's, as you kind of mentioned at the outset of the show, the body doesn't want to get too big. Certainly, the body doesn't want to lose muscle, but beyond a certain point, it's inefficient from a ancestral standpoint. When we go back to our caveman ancestry, if you will, very large muscles would be, first of all, they would weigh you down when you're trying to run fast and to catch your prey if you need be. But as you also mentioned, it's very energetically expensive, and that would just require you to continue to need more food, which is not in abundance in those years. So myostatin is a ceiling drug, if you will, that will cap that. Its role in humans from a training standpoint remains somewhat questionable to me. There is some evidence that the blunting of myostatin during resistance training is a factor. Other studies I've seen shows that actually it really, from a physiological standpoint, unless you're going to really get completely knock out the myostatin. Now we know in double myostatin knockouts, you see huge increases in muscle. And as you mentioned, I think when we were talking earlier about like the Schwarzenegger cattle, they call them the Belgian blue cattle. Where they knock out the double myostatin knockouts, they look like they're on steroids. Right. But in a physiological context, I'm not sure how much it actually means. And when I say I'm not sure, the literature really, to me, is inconclusive in that respect. And what I would say with a quite compelling degree of confidence in is that anything that is promoted at this point for reducing myostatin and supplementation, your legal supplementation at least, would not be an effective means to enhance muscle growth.
In fact, there's a scientist that I had on this show probably 7 years ago from the State University of New York school system. I can't remember which university it was, but they did, in my humble opinion, the quintessential myostatin research. When we talk about myostatin's effect, we're talking about on mature muscle. When we talk about double, knockout rodents like Dr. Sejan Lee worked with, or even the follistatin overproducers, we know that from an embryo to birth, they have already been under the impetus of no myostatin. So their muscles are very different. You take somebody like you or I, and we've spent 50 years in this skin, and now we want to turn off myostatin and see great growth. It works, but it has to be a minimum of 97% suppression continuously to see any muscle changes at all. And then as soon as you remove the suppression, your muscles go right back to where they were. And that's because this is an evolutionary safety net. This is an evolutionary safety net because you don't want unbridled muscle growth. Only bodybuilders and people with inadequate self-esteem want, unbridled muscle growth because they think that they're going to be like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But you don't want that because then all of a sudden your daily requirement for calories goes to 15,000. And it's like, that's not a good thing if you're out there looking for food. Maybe you can do it shopping at A&P and Gristedes, but you're not going to do it in the wilderness. So
I'd also, sorry to interrupt, but I think another very important point is in the double knockouts that you see, the muscle tissue itself is functionally deficient as well. Yes. So yeah, you can, if you're a bodybuilder, I guess you don't care. But it actually, the ratio of the quality of the muscle is poor, and thus carrying the extra bulk has a negative effect on performance because the tissue is less functional and you have greater bulk, which in combination actually results in a functional deficit.
How about NSAIDs? What do you think about NSAIDs? Lots of guys take them. There's research out there that shows that it could blunt protein synthetic response to training. What do you think about them?
Yeah, interesting topic, and there are some nuances here. So what's been shown is in younger people who chronically take NSAIDs, there's a blunting of both strength and hypertrophy. In elderly, older folks, because you're not elderly, but when you're talking like plus 60.
Oh, yes, I am. According to COVID-19, I'm going to die. But anyway.
People who are 60 plus and more, like in their 60s and 70s, it actually has either neutral or in some cases it's been shown to have a positive effect. The theory behind it is that NSAID, so basically, for those who don't know, NSAIDs are COX inhibitors. They're cyclooxygenase enzyme inhibitors. And the COX enzyme is involved in muscle growth. It's amongst other things, though it's involved in inflammation and other factors that can cause pain, which is why blunting it can be a positive effect in the NSAIDs. But it also does have an effect on muscle growth. But another thing that NSAIDs do is they reduce chronic inflammation, or they reduce inflammation. So the COX enzymes I mentioned, and including chronic inflammation. So elderly generally have more chronic inflammatory issues. The interesting thing here is that chronic inflammation is a negative regulator of muscle growth. If you're chronically inflamed, you're going to have a harder time building muscle. And it's one of the reasons why they surmise elderly people are not able to build muscle as well. Whereas young people tend to not have chronic inflammation. And thus, so the suppression of, just to take a step back, the suppression of the chronic inflammation seems to override any negative effects of the suppression of the acute inflammatory response. But the acute inflammatory response is a pro-muscle building effector. And thus in younger people, impairing that acute pro-inflammatory response, since there's not much of a chronic inflammatory response, has a negative effect. So anyway, that would be the general gist of it. I would also say that the occasional use, we're talking chronic use now, is where the issues are. Those who use it occasionally, it's just not going to be an issue.
Before we take our last commercial break, the book is The Science and Development of Muscle Hypertrophy, 2nd edition. You can get it at Amazon.com. You can also visit Dr. Schoenfeld's website, lookgreatnaked.com. And I want to mention something now. We're all so fast to run out and buy, a $90 supplement that promises to increase our muscle growth. But we're not willing to plunk down maybe 90 or less, 60, whatever, for a good book that if you get 2 or 3 good pearls of information from, they will impact your success in the gym for the rest of your life, where that other bottle just ran out and you threw it away and you got to go and buy more. And whether or not it's even working is questionable. I say this because so few people are willing to truly invest in the kind of knowledge and information that will reward them by helping them achieve their goals faster. And there is no better author when it comes to talking about building muscle than Brad. And really, if you go to Amazon and get the book, I promise you that it will reward you for years and years to come. We're going to take one last commercial break. I have a couple more questions for him. Stay tuned.
Build muscle or burn fat. You'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000. Or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today.
There's no denying that a low-carb, low-sugar keto lifestyle has been shown to reverse chronic inflammation and normalize insulin sensitivity. But we all want a sweet snack from time to time. Well, no matter what you're looking for, you'll find it at Perfect Keto. Bars, cookies, exogenous ketones, keto-friendly performance enhancers, it's all in one place. I love their chocolate quad ketone salts that balance all
all 4 minerals. And try their keto bars for unique taste satisfaction, all the while knowing you're staying in your keto lifestyle lane. Go to perfectketo.com/superhuman to save 20% off your purchase today. Over 11 million people in the U.S. have some form of retinal damage, also known as macular degeneration. This is expected to double to nearly 22 million by 2050. Artificial blue light, age, type 2 diabetes are all contributors. Doctors say there's no cure. ARMED is changing that opinion. In one clinical trial, 93% of patients had arrested or improved their condition. 54% reported lessening of glare, reduced dryness, and improved clarity and comfort. And 0% felt worse during treatment and no side effects. Take control of your macular degeneration or keep it from ever occurring. Go to wisechoicemedicine.com and get armed today. If you suffer from digestive issues like gas, bloating, cramping, even when you're eating healthy, nutritious foods, then you could probably benefit from a high-quality enzyme. As you know, I'm a mega fan of Bioptimizers. They're one of the few supplement companies who I use religiously because their products work. I asked them for a great deal for my listeners, and they over-delivered. Right now, you can get a bottle of Masszyme for free. All you need to do is pay a small shipping fee, and there's no catch, no tricks, no forced continuity, nothing to cancel. They're so confident in their product that they offer a 365-day money-back guarantee. I'm positive you'll love the results. I strongly suggest you head over to their site to grab your free bottle before this offer runs out. Go to masszymes.com/SHR free. That's MASSZYMES.com/SHRFREE, all one word. You will automatically get access to your unique coupon code to claim your free bottle, and there's a limit, 1 per household.
Planet Earth CBD offers a fast-acting transdermal patch that targets your aches and pains for the relief you need. Not only is the patch uniquely patented, but it is widely believed to provide larger quantities of available cannabinoids to the source of pain than other brands' subpar products. Effective for 24 to 48 hours. Experience the benefits of Planet Earth's high-quality transdermal patch. Manufactured by Next Generation Technology in an FDA-registered facility. This pressure-sensitive adhesive delivers rich hemp extract directly through the skin. Be it a neck ache or a headache, you can count on CBD to take off the edge. Go to planetearthcbd.com today to learn more.
Chronic stress leaves us tired, distracted, and physically vulnerable. Apollo Neuro is here to help you take control. Apollo Neuro is a new wearable that trains your nervous system to be more resilient to stress. Apollo's gentle vibrations use your sense of touch to help you recover from stress, going from fight or flight to rest and digest so you can relax, get to sleep, focus, and stay healthy. Developed by physicians and neuroscientists, Apollo Neuro has been tested in multiple clinical trials and is proven to improve heart rate variability, the key biometric of stress. Special offer for friends of Superhuman Radio. Try Apollo Neuro today and get 15% off your purchase at apolloneuro.com/superhuman. That's APOLLONEURO.com/superhuman.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. We have a question from somebody in the audience. It's a good one, too. What do you recommend most for blood flow restriction? Incorporate it into a normal routine like a finisher set, arms and legs, by itself, a full protocol? I can't figure out where and how to use it. And that's from Faith Fitness Guy, KK.
Yeah, so the only time I would recommend using it as a standalone would be if you're recovering from an injury or you have substantial osteoarthritis that's affecting you where you just can't lift heavier. And even then, probably combining it with light loads would be more the better route there. First of all, the inherent limitation with blood flow restriction is that it's specific to the limbs. So you're not going to use, you can't use it for your chest. You're not, I mean, there's some residual effects that have been noted in a few studies, but really anything, it's distal. So if you're going to, let's say, cuff here at the deltoid area, you're only going to get results distal. So at the biceps area, forearm, you're not going to get results in the chest, or they'll be very minimal. So anything for the torso would be, you'd need to do direct work anyway. So yeah, I'd recommend using it as a, in tandem with heavier load training. Generally speaking, I think it's better used with single joint movements. I kind of mentioned earlier about using like your compound movements for your heavy load training and then using lighter loads. And I think it could be a very effective tool. And there's actually been some quite interesting research. A colleague of mine, Thomas Bjornson out of Norway, did his PhD work on on the topic, and he actually did one of his studies was in elite powerlifters and showed that they got greater type 1 hypertrophy. Basically, that a group of powerlifters performing traditional resistance training got almost zero hypertrophy in their type 1 fibers, whereas adding the BFR in, just a couple of short cycles of it. So it wasn't like they just were training with BFR. They just did a couple of short BFR cycles, increased the type 1 hypertrophy by, I believe it was 7%, which can be practically meaningful in a bodybuilder. So I think there is a benefit to it, and at least hypothetically or conceivably for type 1 fiber growth, which would be preferential growth as opposed to doing traditional training. I think that needs to be teased out a little more, but if so, it's an exciting area of research, because if you could tap into your type 1 fibers to a greater degree, those are fibers that are harder to hypertrophy.
Interesting. I find I get a good pump in my chest if I put the BFR band around my neck. I'm only kidding. Don't anybody do that, okay? Please. I'm just joking. I'm just being a schmuck. That's all. Mechanical growth factor, IGF-1 EC. I've experimented with it during the COVID lockdown. I couldn't get to the gym. I wasn't motivated to train at home. I like going to the gym. The whole regimentation of getting in the car, going to the gym, my brain changes, everything changes. So I started doing 2 or 3 real mechanical growth factor, not the pegylated long-acting version, shots a day at about 150 micrograms 2 or 3 times a day. And I didn't lose any muscle in the layoff at all. And I watched, I was waiting to see, because usually about 2 weeks out, you start losing muscle. And in fact, that was just validated in the study we're going to talk about later from McMaster's University. It's Stu Phillips's group over there. So I didn't lose anything. I first really learned about the value of MGF and that it was actually called IGF-1 EC from you many, many years ago on the show. How important is it to developing muscle after training?
Yeah, so I really can't speak again to the drug aspects of it.
Right.
And the literature, I've seen some of the literature, but I would not be the one to get into what the exogenous effects would be. But the endogenously, mechanical growth factor, as you said, is a splice variant of IGF-1, and it's basically it's a myokine, so it occurs within the muscle, where the other variants are more specific to the liver, and then they're secreted into the bloodstream, so they're more they're endogenous endocrine factors. Yeah, they're systemic endocrine factors. Whereas the MGF is a myokine, and what I would say is that the research indicates that it helps to kickstart the growth process from training. So theoretically, it is quite important. Now, isolating its effects have been somewhat contradictory and elusive. So there's certainly a lot of it is done in vitro and even ex vivo, but mostly in vitro. And we know in vitro it has very profound effects. Harder to study, to tease out some of the other factors in vivo when it comes to it. But there's, I think, in my humble opinion, good enough evidence that it definitely should be something to be considered. The question is there a way to preferentially upregulate it? We do know that it is both mechanical tension and muscle damage both have effects on mechanical growth factor. We do know, though, that muscle damage there's certainly at best an inverted U where you get too much muscle damage, it has a negative effect on growth. So at what point would any benefits from muscle damage ultimately have negative effects on growth, even irrespective of what it does through MGF? So these are all interesting areas that we definitely need more research on to give a better, more concrete answer.
And lastly, testosterone has been thought to be the king of building muscle. So much so that there are pro bodybuilders out there that will take up to 5 or 6 grams of injectable testosterone a week. And back when I was a young man and first started training, it was said, oh, well, testosterone causes nitrogen retention, and nitrogen retention leads to building more muscle. Are there any new thoughts about testosterone's contribution to building muscle? I remember seeing a study not too long ago that guys with very low testosterone levels were still able to build muscle when they trained hard and dieted right. But what do we know more about testosterone today that we didn't know back then?
Yeah, so I think, again, staying kind of away from the drug aspect of it, because number one, there's no research on
Right.
Ridiculous. There's research on super physiological dosages, but nowhere near. We're talking like 600 milligrams of test a week versus what the guys are taking.
Right.
10 times that amount, some of them.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about endogenous production, the evidence is certainly you can build muscle without substantial. If you're hypogonadal, you can still build muscle. Look, women build appreciable muscle, and their testosterone levels are a tenth of that of men. So certainly you can build muscle. There does, I think the evidence is compelling enough where being within a physiological range is important. So if you're hypogonadal, you will generally have a blunted response to someone that is within a physiological range. Now, with that said, your physiological range, depending upon which stat you look at, is somewhere between 300 to 800 nanograms per deciliter. Sometimes they say 1,000 nanograms per deciliter. I've not seen compelling evidence that, at least within the mid-range of that physiological range, there's any difference. And that, I think, is what's really important. So let's say you blunt testosterone. Let's say you're at 600 and you go down to 400. So you're blunting testosterone by a third. I have not seen any compelling evidence where that really would have an appreciable effect on muscle mass, even though it sounds you're reducing your T levels by a third. Now, if you're, let's say, at 300 versus 800, again, it's really not clear. We don't have any good evidence, but there's some observational data that shows that might have an effect. And that really is kind of, I think, the best the literature can tell us at this point.
The book is The Science and Development of Muscle Hypertrophy. It's the second edition. You can get it at Amazon.com. You can also go to lookgreatnaked.com to learn more about Dr. Schoenfeld if you've been living under a rock and you've never heard of him before. Always great to have you on the show. Very rational, sobering discussions that people should find a great deal of peace in, because this book will help you build muscle no matter where you are in your life. And that's more than I can say about a lot of supplements and products out there that promise to do so. Thanks for being on the show today.
Always my pleasure, Carl.
Talk soon. We're going to take one quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about muscle. There's an interesting study that just came out of McMaster University from Dr. Stu Phillips's lab that looks at muscle loss and may help us understand what's going on when we lose muscle. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. You've heard me talk about the chill pill on the show and how effective it is at helping people who suffer from social anxiety, or sometimes when you just want to take the edge off to a long, stressful day. Well, listen to this story from Dylan Goutreau.
Definitely takes anxiety away, which I have a long history of having. Started out at 2 milligrams a day of Xanax. That was at 8 years old. And so I stopped using benzos 3 years ago. Extremely difficult. Yeah, so I spent about 3 years trying to find anything and everything I could that would be healthy for me to help with anxiety. Because I'm talking, full out panic attack. The chill pill was the first thing that I've found that actually in the middle of a panic attack I can take, and it definitely subsides.
Go to drseeds.com. That's DRSEEDS.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your first bottle of the chill pill. Check it out. I promise this is one supplement that delivers. Everybody wants to feel better, be healthier and happier. If you don't sweat profusely on a regular basis, you won't feel as good as you could. Studies have shown the power of infrared sauna. Infrared penetrates 1 to 2 inches into the body. It helps those with back pain, fibromyalgia, arthritis, depression, and anxiety. Patients get relief from infrared sauna. The Good Health Sauna has been shown to be an exercise mimetic, conveying many of the same benefits as cardio. There are a lot of reasons people buy a Good Health Sauna, but the bottom line is you will be a much happier, healthier person by using the Good Health Sauna every day. You'll crave believe it. You'll love it, and it will be the best purchase you have ever made. Good Health Saunas provide commercial-grade saunas for in-home and commercial use, backed by the best lifetime warranty in the industry. Unmatched customer service and the best financing makes owning one easy and will fit any budget. Go to goodhealthsauna.com/superhumanradio to learn more and save 25% off. If you suffer from digestive issues like gas, bloating, cramping, even when you're eating healthy, nutritious foods, then you could probably benefit from a high-quality enzyme. As you know, I'm a mega fan of Bioptimizers. They're one of the few supplement companies who I use religiously because their products work. I asked them for a great deal for my listeners, and they over-delivered. Right now, you can get a bottle of Masszyme for free. All you need to do is pay a small shipping fee, and there's no catch, no tricks, no forced continuity, nothing to cancel. They're so confident in their product that they offer a 365-day money-back guarantee. I'm positive you'll love the results. I strongly suggest you head over to their site to grab your free bottle before this offer runs out. Go to masszymes.com/SHR free. That's MASSZYMES.com/SHRFREE, all one word. You will automatically get access to your unique coupon code to claim your free bottle, and there's a limit, one per household. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Are you still on the fence about Body Protection Complex BPC Oral from drseeds.com? Listen to Maggie Kuhn, one of the owners of the C-Bus Lifting Company gym in Columbus, Ohio.
I had been having some nagging tendon issues that weren't injuries, just things that were annoying. You know, I'm 58 years old, so just older tendon kind of issues. For us powerlifters, you know, we really don't stop training when we have just nagging issues. We just kind of keep pushing through. And I started the BPC. What I noticed was I was doing some heavy tricep stuff that would have killed me before when I had an elbow problem, and I was able to do this with literally no pain at all.
Go to drseeds.com, drseeds.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your bottle of BPC Body Protection Complex today. I love beef, and if you love beef, listen up. I've discovered the best tasting beef in the world, and that's not an exaggeration, at Piedmontese.com. The Piedmontese breed is famous from Italy for being lean and unbelievably tender with half the fat and calories of traditional beef. Even typically tough cuts are tender when it comes from the Piedmontese cows. And for the first time ever, Piedmontese cows are being raised here in the USA. Get 2 free 10-ounce New York strips when you purchase $50 or more at Piedmontese.com with code SHR. Go to Piedmontese.com and use code SHR today. You will never eat any other type of beef ever again.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Welcome back. So researchers over at McMaster University did a study recently. It was a 10-week study with young men. Very interesting study. And what they did was they had these guys train legs. I think it was leg press. The study will be up in today's write-up also, so you can go look at it. And they did that for 8 weeks. And then the last 2 weeks, they immobilized one of the legs completely. They put a brace on it so that they couldn't put any weight on the leg at all. And the idea was they've looked at muscle gains and muscle losses in groups of people, but they've never looked at it in specific individuals, the same amount of muscle gain and loss. And so this was very interesting study. So the muscle gains were between 1% and 15% over the full 10 weeks. That was the muscle gains. But the muscle loss in the immobilized leg, which only happened for the last 2 weeks of the study, was between 1% and 18%. So the average gain over the course of the first 8 weeks. Well, I take that back. The average gain over the course of the entire 10 weeks of the leg that continued to exercise was about 8%. The average loss over the last 2 weeks of the immobilized leg was about 9%. When you do this math, it actually is 5 times faster muscle loss than gains. And I predict that these young guys, if we did this to elderly people like myself, older guys like me, we'd find out that the muscle loss is even greater. And this fits into the whole discussion that I said earlier when Dr. Schoenfeld was on the show. And I said, 2 weeks, it usually takes 2 weeks of not training to start to see the changes in your muscles. And a lot of people have said that, and it's anecdotal, but millions of people over decades have noticed this. So it's become accepted. In just 2 weeks, the immobilized leg on average lost the same amount of muscle mass that the opposite leg had gained through more than 2 months of weight training. This is very, very fascinating. And it really makes perfect sense when you really think about it, right? The group discovered that there appears to be 141 genes that regulate the growth of the body's skeletal muscle. Tethered to the skeleton by tendons, they are muscles that control power and movement. And these are the prime movers, right? Back, legs, shoulders, and so on. So looking at the average muscle gains and the average muscle losses in the leg that was then immobilized for 2 weeks, we can see that it's a 5 times greater or faster loss than it is gains. And I've said on this show that if I take off for a couple weeks, the crawl back up the hill is so much slower than the slide down the hill. And it's really true. Why is this important? Because it fits into evolutionary medicine. Like we said a second ago, muscle is metabolically expensive. You have to feed it calories. If you don't feed it calories, it's not going to linger. It's not going to stick around. And muscle loss happens even faster than fat loss now. We can see that just from this one study. Why is this? Well, if you're not moving much, if you're not moving heavy weight, if you're not transporting your body for long distances, if you're not doing this stuff, then you're not hunting. You're not feeding yourself. So the body is going to automatically make adaptations to keep you from starving to death. That's really what this comes out to. And they can, the thing that I found most fascinating about this, what they discovered in this study, was not that we should look at having older people move more and continue to do resistance training type exercises instead of just walking. Instead, what they said was, if we can target those genes with lifestyle and drug therapies, the drug therapies got me, the lifestyle I get, we may be able to help seniors and others vulnerable to muscle loss. I don't think you need drugs. Maybe testosterone. I take that back. Maybe testosterone. We do know that when men get low on testosterone and women, their desire to move drops, their sense of well-being goes away, and you're less likely to train, I would imagine. But the reality is that understanding this should dictate that doctors should be prescribing resistance training. I've talked about this so many. It's ridiculous that a doctor prescribes drugs, that will prescribe that a patient see a nutritionist, and most nutritionists don't know a damn thing about what they're talking about. The God's honest truth is, I'm sorry to say it, that doctors do not prescribe resistance training, that they don't have the ability to take out a pad and write a prescription that you go see this personal trainer. Maybe they have 4 or 5 personal trainers that they work with. And I blame this on personal trainers because the science is there. The science shows that people who exercise, continue to exercise, they do things like squats and step-ups, they don't fall as often, they're able to get out of chairs, they're able to live independently. We know this. The disconnect is that the way a pharmaceutical rep calls on a doctor and says, hey, next time your patient comes in with this problem, prescribe this drug. We need a concerted effort of personal trainers. And maybe it should be the organization that certifies you. Maybe it should be ISSA. Maybe it should be NFPT. Maybe it should be organizations that actually train you to be a personal trainer. Maybe the burden should be on them to start calling on doctors and saying, look at this research. Look at this great science. Strong people live the longest. We know that. That's been shown in research. People who continue to do things like step-ups and squats, they don't fall as often. We know that from research. We know that people are less likely to become insulin resistant when they keep growing muscle or maintaining their muscle. One study looked at women to the age of 60 and men to the age of 65, those who maintained muscle to those ages, their life expectancy was greater and their health expectancy was greater. They didn't develop diseases. Who is going to start calling on doctors and saying, look, this is undeniable science. Why are you not prescribing resistance training for your patients? The doctor's going to say, I don't know anything about resistance training. I don't know if I should do it. What if they hurt themselves? I'll be liable. Great. Then let us be responsible for that. Let the personal trainer be responsible for that. But at least get them involved. You'll have healthier patients. If that matters to a doctor, they should be willing to start working with personal trainers. And their patients need this. Their life outcomes will be so much better if they start learning the value of muscle and how it will improve the quality of their life, their longevity, their health span, and everything along with it. So I'll put this study in the notes. If you're a personal trainer, I've done these shows before where I said personal trainers need to take this and take it to a local doctor and say, you should have doctors in your town feeding you new clients every day. On top of that, with the COVID-19 thing, get yourself a little truck or a van or take your car and put your dumbbells and your kettlebells in your trunk and say, and on top of that, doc, I go to them. There are huge opportunities within the personal training industry today, but no one is working on it. Everybody's working at a gym waiting for somebody to come in and tell them, hey, I want to lose weight. You could actually be saving lives. You could actually be changing lives. You need to find doctors to work with. Take this research, take the other research. I've done other shows about this. Put it all together. Go and start calling on doctors. Create a cut sheet, especially if you're a good-looking guy and you got muscle. You're a good-looking girl and you've got muscle. Be like the pharmaceutical rep. Walk into that office proud. Look at the physique. When you walk in, the girls at the front desk, the guys at the front desk, they're going to look at you. They go, wow, that's a beautiful person right there. And say, hey, I'd like to leave you a flyer. Leave a flyer. Get to the office manager. Follow what the pharmaceutical industry does to build your book of business. You should have 5 doctors in your town feeding you clients every single day. You should have to hire other people to work for you. And we're not taking advantage of people by doing this. We're actually solving health problems. Insurance premiums will go down eventually. If we started doing this, 5 years from now, we'd have a different population out there. Not everybody, but a larger percentage than we do right now. So take this study, take this information, and go see some doctors and say, hey, now you have a personal trainer on your staff. I won't hurt your patients. Here's what I'm going to make them do. Here are the types of movements we'll do. I'm going to and check back with you to see how they're doing on their checkups. Work in tangent with them. This is a missing component of health today, and it's really the final piece that will start to make people healthy. Really. That's it for today. We have a great show tomorrow. We're going to explore the nutritional legacies of the bodybuilding diet. I learned about this from Randy Roach. Volume 1 of Muscle, Smoke, and Mirrors. And tomorrow we have Bill Taco coming on, who is a personal trainer, but more importantly, he works with IFBB professional athletes, fixing their diet for them so that they can reach their goals. He's going to be on tomorrow, and we're going to talk about the nutritional legacies of the bodybuilding diet. Diets come and go. Carnivore, paleo, keto. But this diet has been producing results for over 100 years today. People like Vince Gironda, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Chet Yorton. I mean, the list goes on and on. It was the origins of the low carb, low inflammation diet that actually is a cornerstone of health. And we're going to explore that tomorrow, so don't miss. By the way, we have a new Instagram page for Superhuman Radio. It's at Superhuman Radio. Could you please go and follow on Instagram? We have some great content up there, special offers and so on. Again, if you're on Instagram at Superhuman Radio, check it out, like us, follow us. Thank you so much. Share the show, help some people. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks a lot.